Hello and welcome to Guitarist Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.guitarist.com. My name is Jason JROCK Houston, and I'd like to welcome to the show today guitarist Talor Steinberg from the band Moon City Masters. Welcome to the show today, Tailor. How you doing?
I'm good, Jason. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
Yeah, you were sharing with me, before we went on air that feeling a little under weather. Sorry to hear about that, but you sure do sound upbeat,
Yeah. We were just in LA playing, and I think I got a little cold. I tested twice, no COVID.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's funny. The flu, COVID, they all start off with the same symptoms. So but I'm all good. Just a little out of action today, but not too bad. But nothing that will add.
The weather's kind of crazy here. It hardly ever rains here, and it's been raining ever since last night, and going to be rain for the next couple of days. But we love it when we get it. So I got to tell you, I got to thank your publicist for sending me a little press release on your band, because I've never heard of you guys before, and so I was checking out some of your music prepping for the interview today, and I really just love the sound of you guys. What I love is you guys aren't really kind of trying to reinvent the wheel or anything. It sounds like great kind of 70s hard rock from back in the day, which I love, because that was my era of music that I really dig and listen to this very. I mean, I listen to this stuff, and it's kind of reminds me of a combination of like Boston, Bad Company, maybe a little bit of Foghat, the Doobie Brothers, and Foreigner, all mixed into one. Were you at all influenced by any of that?
I heard Boston. What were the other ones that you did? I heard Doobie Brothers, Foreigner, Foghat, Boston, Bad Company. Bad Company and Boston, definitely. The first Boston album's amazing. Paul Rogers, the first Bad Company album, his stuff was free. That's like some of my favorite stuff to listen to. So those ones are awesome. Doobie Brothers I really like, but I wouldn't say they're an influence.
I got you.
I've been hearing a lot of them. I've been hearing that we sound like them, and none of those bands, I take it all as a compliment when people say we sound like any of those bands, but definitely the first Boston album, and Bad Company, definitely big influences.
Well, who wasn't influenced by the very first Boston album? I love everything they did, and what's amazing is because I was kind of young when the first album came out. I heard a lot of those songs when I was younger, on the radio, and I remember when they came out with Third Stage in 1986. That was like the first thing they'd done in years, and I mean, they just blew up all over the place again.
Third Stage has some I love that song, We're Ready. That's a great song.
Cool the Engines.
But their first album, it's probably that, Van Halen 1 and Zeppelin 1. Can you think of any better debut hard rock album?
No, there's a couple, and a lot of times, they say a band has their whole life to write their debut album, and that's why a lot of times those really great debut albums you mentioned are because a band is paying their dues in the clubs, and they finally get a record deal, and that's why a lot of those songs are talking about when they were young and experiencing things in life, and that's what I think a lot of those great debut albums are,
Yeah, I definitely think it's true. There's a lot of there's a lot of bands that they like all the best stuff is like the first album or the first few, and then after it's true. I think what's interesting, because they didn't gig that stuff. I think they just wrote it. I'm blanking the guitar players. Tom Schultz, he wrote everything in his basement, in a little recording studio. It kind of reminds me of us going on with the whole COVID thing. We were stuck at home when we wrote and recorded a lot of that music. Taking it back and over now, we had those lying around pre-pandemic, but they got heavily produced. But everything else was written during the lockdown. A lot of that stuff was written during the big lockdown of COVID. So it's like, we didn't get to test that stuff live and hear how people react to it. We kind of just had to go with our gut.
So let me ask you, Tailor, were you around in the 70s, or is that just kind of a music that influenced you and you grew up on?
I was not even close to being even a thought, but in the 70s. I'm a 90s kid. I was born in the 90s.
and so, how did you get turned on to your parents? And the reason I ask is, like I said, okay, I was around back then, and that's a lot of the music I grew up on, and it's kind of interesting that somebody your age gets turned on to that music, and I think part of the reason is just they don't make music like that anymore, you know.
Yeah, it's so funny. And even like it's like 70s hard rock, but even if you hear us compared to like newer hard rock bands, like it's like we're like the Eagles next to modern hard rock music. You know,
Yeah,
so much softer.
Yeah.
You know, and no, you know, my dad was a kid in New York City in the 60s and 70s. He went to Woodstock. He showed me bands like Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix, and my older brother showed me some music, some harder rock music, like Ozzy and Guns N' Roses. But you know, I got really into late 60s. We got in late 60s, early 70s stuff like Cream and Zeppelin, and then you just kind of go, what else is out there? What else is we got really into? And we got really into Rush and Boston and Humble Pie and, you know, Yes, or like, you know, we just started, and we got really into soul music. You kind of just, when you get to an area, you go, okay, what came 5 years later? What was around also at that time? And it just, we just became junkies for it when we, like me and my brother, you know, because our dad just showed us a couple bands and we got obsessed.
And I'm sure your dad, being from Vera, he was growing up. You guys just probably heard that in the house and on the radio. Whenever you go.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we had the Allman Brothers and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Rolling Stones got forced down our throats, so I kind of like rejected it for a little bit. But all, like the Who, like we just grew up with all that, and then from there, I got one of our big favorites is Deep Purple and Grand Funk Railroad. And,
that's all great.
Yeah,
that's all
that stuff.
That's all my favorite stuff, you know. And it's interesting. A lot of those bands you mentioned are, of course, great American rock bands, and then you mentioned, of course, like the Who and Rolling Stones. And I think anybody who's into great classic rock music are going to be into those guys as well, because the great classic European rock bands. And I think all the bands you've mentioned, one thing they all have in common is besides great music, which I think is a key element, but great songwriting, because
songs matter the most.
Yeah,
it's the most important thing. It's just you gotta write. It doesn't. We really. I'm not saying I'm writing music as good as those guys, but that's what we're trying. It's our goal is just to write as great songs as we can.
See, I think the best compliment I can give you, having just recently discovered your band and hearing the music for the first time, if I didn't know any better, I might mistakenly think, hey, this must be a band from the 70s. And
I always tell people, hey, if it was 1973, we'd be opening up for Uriah Heep. we'd be the opening band for Deep Purple or something.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny you say that, because I mean, you mentioned a band like the Eagles. What I love about them, just again, great songwriting. I've been hearing those songs on the radio for like, you know, the last 40 years, and that's the reason they still resonate with not just me, but everybody who's ever heard the Eagles. You know, those songs mean something to people.
Yeah, it's good songwriting lasts forever. You know, that's why so much of this music is still so popular with younger people, and it's because it's
and like,
know, good songs last forever. It's simple as that.
And you brought up Paul Rodgers, great legendary British singer, you know, from Free and Bad Company. I think like with Free, I'm not familiar with a lot of that stuff. Of course, I've heard All Right Now, some of the stuff that's played on the radio, but I think like that's a great example with Free. There's a guy that was just kind of getting started, you know.
Yeah. Oh my God. And I think in some ways, I think his voice is better now than at the height of their fame. I saw him live a few years ago, like right before the pandemic hit, and it was him and Jeff Beck and Ann Wilson, and he was incredible.
Yeah, and all those.
That guy can still sing his ass off.
And all those bands, like Foreigner, for example, they're still a band that's out there touring, and they don't put out too much new music anymore, but they live on their great, you know, catalog of music, and they've only got one original band, but they're one of those bands that's able to do that because those songs really mean something to people.
Yeah, their songs really, good songs last forever, you know, that's just the truth, man. And their current singer, Kelly Hansen, he's ridiculous.
I mean, he's got it down. I mean, I don't know what else to say than that, but yeah.
He's a great singer, you know. You always want the original people, but if you're going to replace the original people, they figured out they got the right people to replace the originals.
So that's you know, and it's interesting that you say that I'm not the only one that's told you that you guys kind of remind them of Doobie Brothers, I mean, that's just one band, and I kind of think, you know, what I'm saying there is, you know, the Doobie Brothers maybe also have a little bit of a black influence to their music, but I think anybody, for example, that's into any of these bands we've mentioned would definitely dig you guys.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I hear the Doobie Brothers a lot because I think we have a lot of soul influence in our music too, a lot of funk and they're a rock band, but they add extra stuff, especially in different eras. You know, Michael McDonald was such a R&B guy, and what he brought in the band, and you know, there's a lot of that in our music too. So I you know, in the harmonies, like I said, everyone that you've compared us to, I've heard it, and even if they're not necessarily a huge influence, I definitely think their bands. It's definitely a huge compliment to hear that people think we sound like them.
And Taylor, I understand you're a guitar player. Do you also sing, or?
Yeah, me and my brother Jordan's the bass player. We split the lead vocals. You know, we do that whole like Deep Purple Mark III thing. We co-lead sing.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
It's the best.
Some of my favorite bands, you know, did that. I mean, that's, for example, like you mentioned, Deep Purple. I love the combination of Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. I mean, and it's amazing because, like, I look at that first album they did with Deep Purple, and everybody thought when Ian Gillan left Deep Purple it was all over for those guys. But they just brought something extra, and their voices together was magic.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. It was like having Paul Rodgers and Steve Winwood in a band together. You know, like it's amazing. And you know, Glenn Hughes has commented and he's commented on some of our stuff, and I comment back. I'm like, you and David Coverdale taught us how to do this co-lead singing, the harmonies, and you know, I love Ian Gillan, and I love his era of the band.
Yeah, of course.
Just as much, but what's better than one great singer, two great singers in a band?
I mean, I've always loved that. Like, one of my other all-time favorite bands is Kiss, and one of the reasons I loved Kiss always, besides the, you know, makeup and the theatrics, was because, like, you had Gene and Paul kind of, you know, singing lead on different songs. On some of the songs, they would do co-lead vocals. That was some of the.
What about Peter Criss? He had a great voice.
Yeah. And what's interesting, if you check out the, like the first kind of three Kiss albums that didn't really do too much, Ace Frehley was writing a lot of that stuff, like Parasite, although people might think it's a Gene Simmons song, but if you look at the songwriting credit, he wrote a lot of that stuff, and he was not as comfortable being a lead singer back then, and so he would typically give his songs to, you know, Gene or Peter, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and you know, Ace Frehley, his voice really works for like Shock Me and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you know, I think he's I think when you're in a band with Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons and Peter Criss, I think he's such an underrated singer. I think he's got that rasp and rustle. He goes, well, I think those guys got it more than me. I'll just be a badass on the guitar.
I mean,
sing every now and then.
Yeah. I mean, I think Ace has kind of developed into a great singer. He's not a great lead singer, but for the style that he writes, it works, you know?
I think he's, I don't think great is always necessary.
Yeah.
I think he has his own thing, you know, and I think having your own voice is sometimes better than having a great voice.
Kind of like David Lee Roth, if you've ever heard those early Van Halen albums, he's not the world's greatest singer, but for what he...
Oh my God, you listen to Van Halen 2 and it's like, okay.
He makes
like, it... Who else would sing over that?
He makes it work, and a lot of times if you listen, a lot of the lyrics are nonsensical, but they're so Dave, and that's what I love about it.
Oh yeah, you know, I said this in another interview the other day. It's like, I think sometimes having a member of the band, like having limits, like I love the Hagar era just as much as the Roth era.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of both, but you know, people say like the Hagar era got poppier. It got more like, it just got more like they just diversified their sound. And I think what was so good about the Roth era, since he was such a limited singer, I think it made their sound more focused. Sometimes I think limitations create innovation.
Yeah, I mean, Sammy, I agree with you. I love both eras of Van, but I think people say that they diversified with Hagar. I think that's because he was much more of a capable vocalist. He could sing a great power ballad, and he could sing a song that
he could sing anything.
Yeah, he could sing anything.
I think he's got like the best American rock voice.
Yeah.
And what's hilarious is because like when he joined Van Halen, he was in his late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
I think he really hit his prime as a singer in his 40s, his late 30s to mid 40s.
Yeah.
You know, his range.
Sure.
Oh my God, I love both. Like I said, I mean, sometimes I lean towards liking the Roth album.
Yeah, of
better,
course. Yeah.
But I'd rather pay to hear it with Hagar live than with Roth.
Yeah. I mean,
He's so good.
and I gotta ask, what's it like playing in a band with your brother? I mean, do you guys get along? You butt heads or?
Well, you know, we butt heads like brothers do.
Yeah.
You know, like you that was like, but never about the music. You know, I'm one of five. I fight with all my siblings, except my sister. She's the coolest. But you know, we argue, but it's nothing deep. We're best friends, and like, you know, and it's never about the music. We're always on the same page creatively. We just enjoy doing this together, and it's, you know. No, like, you know, nothing like the guys in Oasis. You hear stories about them, or the Van Halen brothers, like, or like the Kinks. Like, no, we compared to those guys, we get along amazing.
I mean, I think the besides the Kinks, probably the two famous rock brothers that really have a love-hate thing is probably the Black Crowes. You know, Rich and Chris.
Oh yeah, see, we're not gonna. Yeah, but they got back together.
Yeah, they
kissed. Like, but and even the Van Halen brothers, they got along. They loved each other. Got along. But then they would also, like, you know,
butt heads. Yeah.
But then they also, I read David Hagar's book, and they talk about like fist fights and stuff. But now we argue every now and then, like brothers do. But you know, compared to no, it's pretty harmonious. You know, considering being brothers in a band together.
And who started playing first? Like, was it you or him? Or
we started playing at the same time.
Wow.
We saw our first concert of Red Hot Chili Peppers when we were like 11 years old.
Wow.
And my brother didn't understand what a bass was, so we both got guitars. 3 months later, he learned that the big guitar was a bass, so he switched to bass, and it's just been nonstop ever since.
Wow. And so, when was the point where you guys knew you wanted to be in a band together or play together?
Instantly.
Yeah. And
instantly. We've been writing songs and learning songs and playing together instantly. What we dragged our feet on was being the lead singer. My brother started singing before me, but he never wanted to be the lead singer. He always wanted a front man. And as we got to high school, they just realized we were never going to find that, so he started embracing it. I started doing like the Michael Anthony thing, doing the high harmonies, and then he's like, you know, you could do it too, and we started trading. It's
funny you say that, because like Michael Anthony, I mean, I think there's no denying he is the background sound of Van Halen, and it's so noticeable what he brings to that band.
Oh yeah, he is the consistent vocal sound of Van Halen.
Yeah.
You know, like singers come and go, but I guess eventually he did leave too. But you know, his sound never went away. You know, and I first started off I was just the backing singer, and we went to lessons and stuff. But then, you know, as my confidence grew as a singer, and he started hearing me. He's like, "Yeah, why don't we just both take the vocal? Why don't you take the vocal on this one?" And so the singing was the hardest, because you know, no kid wants to sing. You want to find a singer, and then you realize you want someone that can sing in that Robert Plant range, and my brother, and it's like they're like, okay, we can do that, because that's what we try to sing like when we're at home. Yeah. Okay, let's go for it.
So that's good that you guys kind of push each other, but like when you started getting, you know, making your album and stuff, and started letting people hear the music, were you surprised at the kind of responses people were giving? Like, people must be telling you, like me, like, oh, you know, you guys sing pretty good, and it's a great sounding album. Were you like, wow, people are responding this better than I thought they would?
Well, you know what? My parents really do believe it. Like, they always believed in us, and they really were supportive of this.
That's great.
But I really, you know, they're like also, but as supportive as they are, my family is also like our biggest critics. So it really wasn't until we were in a million bands together, different lineups, and it wasn't until we started doing the Moon City Masters where we were like personally like proud of our music that we were writing and performing. And you know, I guess the reaction, you know,
I guess
I'm surprised and I'm not surprised. You know, it sounds so big-headed. I do this music. We're just trying to write the music we want to hear, and it's real. We really mostly think about how happy we are when we hear it.
Yeah, I mean, just talking to you, like again, you sound so upbeat, and I love that about you. And the music is really kind of upbeat, and I think anybody that's into that kind of music is just gonna rock their world. And the interesting thing about that is you could write all the songs and be the great songwriters that you guys are, and you could have somebody else come in and sing your songs. But I think they're also, as great as they might be, you might be more critical about saying, well, that's not the way I wrote the song, or that's not the way I envisioned it. This way you can kind of do it your way.
Well, that's what the Moon City. Look, we have a producer we work with that we love very much, and we obviously take his input. Yeah. But the whole point of the Moon City Masters was we're not going to compromise anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That was the whole thing with bands we were in, is that we were always in bands with 2 or 3 other members, and it was like, Jordan and I were always on the same page, like musically, what we wanted the music to sound like. But we had other people that they wanted to help. They had their idea of what and it's like when everyone's compromising, no one's vision is getting out. So after the last band like that, we were just like, you and I always know what we want this to sound like. Let's no more other members, Let's write the songs, really fine tune it, and then we'll have a producer help us poke holes into it.
Yeah. Or typically, or when you have a band, typically it's 1 or 2 guys that kind of get their vision out, of other members of a band kind of, held back. Now, before I let you go, Taylor, I want to ask you, let's talk about the band's name, because that's another thing. Just kind of when I got the press release on the band, I was like, what a cool sounding name. And I know that's one of the hardest things is to come up with a band name.
Oh my God, it's the hardest thing. It's the only name we've ever had that I've never been embarrassed to tell people.
Original too.
Honestly, you hang out with your brothers and you do things that make you feel and act funny, and funny names come out.
Yeah. And so now the album came out November 4th, I understand, and the songs I've heard so far are Taking It Back, Where You Want to Run, and Spinning Wheels. And all 3 of those are, I think, kind of gives me an idea that if I like those 3 tunes, I'm going to love the rest of the album. So tell people where they can pick up the album.
Okay, on Spotify, there's Apple Music. We're on every streaming service. If you want a CD, we do sell CDs still. You can go on our website, mooncitymasters.com, or go to our Shopify and buy a CD. But we're everywhere. Wherever you can buy and stream music, we're there.
And so how long has the band been together?
Oh man, this Moon City Masters, it's so funny because we've been in bands together since we were kids, but every band. But the Moon City Masters has been a thing since 2019. Right
before the pandemic, so this is a
We put out our first EP 2 months before the pandemic.
Wow.
Man, what a whirlwind.
I guess if anything, it gave you more time to kind of really craft your songs and get it to where you want. So I hope you guys are going to go out and tour by whatever plans as far as that goes.
Oh well, we're playing a lot. We just played LA with our buddies Joyous Wolf at the Viper Room.
Oh wow.
Played Boston. We just opened up for a great guitar player named James Nichols. We got a headline show in New York City this Friday at Rockwood Music Hall. And then we're touring Europe for 3.5 weeks at the end of November. Now,
for a band that's kind of, just kind of really kind of unknown and just kind of new, how did the chance to tour Europe come about?
We've put a lot of these songs out as singles before. Wow. We were getting a buzz online, and it's just honestly, before the band formed in late 2018, and we put out our first thing in early 2019. But honestly, we built more of a fan base during the lockdown of the pandemic, putting out singles and working with social media. We really got in this mindset we have to focus on what we can control and what we can't control.
Congratulations on that, though.
Once we came out of the pandemic, we got better opportunities, and booking agents found us and say, "Hey, you guys want to come to Europe?" We're like, "Yeah, let's go to Europe."
Congratulations, because that's a big thing, and I'm imagining that's gonna be your first trip to Europe, huh?
Oh, we're so excited about it. We're just it's the longest tour we've done, and I'm already thinking about when are we going back after it.
Yeah. I mean, what a way to kind of break in 2023. And so how many songs are on the new album?
I think there's 11.
I love that, a full-length album.
Yeah, that's the way to go. We did so many of the singles, and I'm not a playlist guy. I like listening to an album start to finish because not every song is supposed to be a hit single. Sometimes it's just like, when you get really into a band, your favorite song isn't the hit single off the album.
Yeah. I mean, if you look like we were talking about Kiss earlier, and Peter Criss, what a great singer you thought he was. I thought he was a great drummer back in his early days, but I think he's more. I think he's a better singer these days. But in any event, that's kind of what happened with Beth. They released originally the single was Detroit Rock City, but it was some DJ that flipped and started playing the B side of that, and Beth is what because of her fans it took off, and that became the hit.
Yeah, you gotta that's what it means. Like you gotta put the music out and let the fans decide what the best song is.
Yeah.
That's what we did. Taking It Back is kind of like the overwhelmingly favorite, but I like them all. If I didn't like them all, I wouldn't put them out.
And I'm an old school guy like that, whereas I dig that you gotta get with modern times, and that's the way it's done, is releasing a single at a time. But back in the day, all these bands you've been talking about, they put out great, you would get the whole package. You get an album of 11 or 12 great new tracks, That's the way it was done back then.
Yeah, and not every band is a singles band,
Yeah.
Or some bands, it takes them a couple albums to start writing hit singles,
Yeah, and to wrap it up today, Taylor, what I really love about your story is like you guys just kind of formed before the pandemic, got the band going, things are really starting to happen, you people discovering the band, just because of internet online, without even much push from a record company. You guys kind of all done it, yourself, and I love that for you.
Thank you so much. It's a tough journey, but if a record company comes knocking and gives us the right offer, we're open for business. But until then, we're just gonna keep chugging along.
And the cool thing about the band having this I guess success is in the eye of the beholder. Success means, but to me, what's happening for this band is must be very exciting for you. And even though you don't have a record label behind you, maybe to get that kind of response, you're able to also kind of keep whatever money comes in for you and your brother, as opposed to some record company getting all the money.
No, it's true. You get to control your destiny a lot more. It's record. We talk about the next album we record, shopping into a label, and we might. I would love. There's a party that wants to do that, but it's also it's got to be the right offer, the right deal, because there is a certain level of creative freedom that you still want to be able to have.
I mean, it's a necessary evil, of course, if you get a label behind you, there's a little more money in that to promote your stuff.
It's honestly just a promotional budget.
Yeah.
If promotional budget, if money was no object, I'd be like, I'm my own record company.
Yeah. I mean, you even look at a great classic rock band like Creedence Clearwater Revival. You hear all those songs on the radio, but for years, the record company owned all the rights to those songs. John Fogerty wouldn't play any of those songs until he got the rights back, so you just never know.
Yeah. Well, one thing we will do if and when that happens is have a good lawyer read a contract.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Taylor, I really enjoyed talking today. I'd love to talk to you again. Now, before I let you go, I was just curious. You talked a lot about the bands that influenced you. And I was curious, what are some of your favorite guitar players? You mentioned Van Halen, so I'm betting Eddie, but who else?
Oh, Eddie Van Halen's one of my favorites. Let's see, Richie Blackmore.
Oh, I love Richie, yeah.
Steve Morse.
Oh,
Alan Holdsworth. Gary Moore.
Oh, you're all over the place. That's cool. And the reason I was asking is also for the same website, I do an interview series called On the Record, where we talk with musicians about, you would pick an album you'd want to talk about. And so maybe think about that, and down the line we could do that.
I'd love to do that. Thank you so much, Jason.
Okay, the interview we just did is going to be going up probably about a week or two. I will be sure to let...
Steinberg.